Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Erin Florio. I am the executive editor of Condé Nast Traveler, and I am very excited to be here talking with Nirmal Savaramutu, who is the president and CEO, and that's Chief Experiences Officer at Virgin Voyages. Obviously, there's been a lot. There's always a lot of news coming out of cruise, but a lot of news coming out of the cruise industry in the past 2 years. Some okay, a lot of it a little bit hard to navigate. And I think, the emergence of Virgin has been a really exciting part of the industry. So my first question I want to ask you is, I read that the way Virgin Voyages came together, and I haven't fact-checked this, so you can sort of let me know if I'm on the right track, was yourself and a few of the colleagues were together in a room and you really sort of brainstormed what it was the cruise industry was missing and it needed, and your brainstorming led to Virgin Voyages. What was it that you identified that the cruise industry was missing?
Yeah, so somewhat loosely true. So actually the story is that Richard has wanted to build a cruise line for a long time. So when you talk to Richard, he'll tell you he's the story that when he was in his 20s, he wanted to do it. When he was in 30s, he wanted to do it. When he was in 40s, and then he kept going, and now he's in his 70s, and we finally got it done. So he kind of looks at us and says, it took you a while. but we got there eventually. And he basically had said, I really think the brand makes a lot of sense in travel. If you look at where the brand has been most successful, it's in these service-based industries with lots and lots of touch points. And so about 15 years ago, when I first started working at Virgin, we took a step back and said, well, where can the brand grow? And the brand can grow significantly in the US because it was really an underserved market for us, and significantly into travel and hospitality because at that point, we only really had Virgin Atlantic and Virgin America had just launched in North America. And so we conceived hotels and cruises actually as the two big growth opportunities for us. And we sequenced them with hotels first so we could learn a bit more about what it takes to bring a Virgin hospitality experience to life, and then moved into cruises after that. Because the challenge for us was that this brand has never really come to life across this many touch points. If you think about it, yes, we've had great operations in gyms and in planes and banks and things like that, but that's a handful of interactions with you and a customer, right? So if I'm on a plane, it's maybe 6 major interactions. I check in, I get to the boarding gate, I get greeted, I get some food, I take a nap, and I leave. A hotel is a different animal, and a cruise is a completely different animal in that. And so we've always wanted to do it, but wanted to make sure we kind of worked out what it meant to bring Virgin to life in hospitality. Mm-hmm. And typically what we look for is that we look for these markets that have somewhat of an underserved segment. So the great Virgin businesses are always the ones that go after a sort of overlooked niche within that market. And so when we looked at cruise, so this is a fantastic industry. So we always also look for really good industries, the way we can offer a slightly different perspective. And we never go into an industry saying this industry is a poor industry, actually, because that's a very difficult business model to make work, right? Being a good company in a bad industry is a very difficult thing to work, right? I'd rather be a good company in a good industry. And so we always start with a good industry, and then what can we do and offer our point of difference that's doing for an underserved market. In our case, we saw a need for something that was a bit more relaxed, something that was a little less structured. Mm-hmm. We saw a gap for something that was exclusively adult, particularly at this price point. Because if you think about our industry has a lot of great product that's very family orientated. We've got a lot of great product that's adult oriented, but not adult only. And we have a few adult only products that are much higher price points. And so we saw this sort of gap for a more affordable, exclusively adult option. It's still premium, but we felt that there was a big gap for that. And that was one of the reasons why we thought this made a lot of sense. And we sort of went after it a bit further than Richard had dreamed of way back when. And so now we are 16 years later, and we finally managed to make it happen. And then the pandemic hit, so it was great timing.
Yeah, it actually was great timing. I'm glad you brought that up, because I would love to know, you have this great brand, this great vision. I mean, Virgin, and I mean this in a good way, is known as the industry disruptor. The industries it enters into, it does so in its own way, and it brings a whole fresh new crowd and perspective. You're all set to go and cruise, a breath of fresh air, and then here you are, this operational brand that hadn't hit the water yet, and COVID stopped you from launching April 1st, 2021, which was when you were supposed to go into the Caribbean. So you got ahead of you by 2 weeks. What do you think, looking back, were there any benefits to actually not having hit the water before COVID hit and being able to properly launch in 2021? And what were those benefits?
Look, I think COVID was a difficult time for everybody, right? I think from a personal perspective, I think we all enjoyed a slightly slower pace of life, and I think we all, as a world, understood what the real priorities are for us, right? And things like work-life balance and healthy living became such a big focus, right? That was a huge benefit for us as a brand because it's a lot of what we stand for, right? We stand for, healthy living, sustainability, looking after yourself. And a lot of those things played into what we did. I have this joke with our marketing team. They still don't take it up, but I said, you should go on an adult-only cruise so you can distance yourself from learning, because everyone was stuck doing distance learning with their kids for 2 years. And so for us, I think the opportunity was even more reinforced that this product had a home in the cruise industry and there was a sizable niche market for it. And that made us feel much stronger about it. Now, it was a tough time managing through that, right? And our crew were absolutely incredible managing through that. One of the stats we're very proud of is we had 85% of our shipboard crew came back to us after the pandemic. And again, new brand that had never really operated before. For them to take that leap of faith and come back in the way they did was fantastic for us. So we took a lot of learnings through that. And I think as an industry, we took a lot of learnings from that as well, right? We as an industry had to think about a little bit more about what it meant to keep people safe and what our protocols needed to be and how we could communicate that to the world. And I think as an industry, we've done a great job in working together to come out the other side of the pandemic in a great place. And I think that's the wonderful thing about probably Seatrade this year. There's a real optimism in the air, right? Travel is back, travel is surging in airlines and hotels and in cruising. I think everyone's reported we've all had record booking months in March, right? Which is just fantastic to see. So I think we're all looking forward to having all that behind us, and we're all looking forward to the future, and we feel the future is very bright for our brand and for the industry generally.
So one of the most compelling parts of Virgin Voyages, of course, is the onboard experience. It's very famously documented. Roman and Williams was involved in the design, one of the top design firms anywhere. There are tattoo parlors on board. I asked Nirmal before, semi-jokingly, how many tattoos have actually made onto people's bodies on board, and he said quite a few. So popular new amenities. When you look at all of these collaborations and people you've brought on board, what is the demographic of traveler you're trying to get on board with you?
Yeah, I think it's a common misperception about us. When we initially launched, people thought this was all about people in their 20s who wanted to get tattoos and go on a cruise.
But people in their 50s want tattoos too, right?
Apparently they do. Our average age is actually in their late 40s, which I think people are surprised at, because at the end of the day, this is a premium adult getaway. And it plays very well into that kind of a market. We do have a fairly wide age group across, but that 30s to 60s and 70s, our sweet spot, we're averaging in the sort of the high 40s, which is a great place to be. It's an affluent market. It's a market that's looking for something a little bit different. The service levels on board are professional but relaxed. We allow our crew to be themselves. Mm-hmm. Some of them do have visible tattoos, and that's totally fine with us. And I think that's part of the magic of Virgin, is that we hire people, we allow them to be themselves, we encourage them to be themselves, and not look to hide who they are. And what makes this wonderful culture, but also a wonderful service experience on board for our sailors.
So these 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, not the spring break. It's not spring break on the ocean by any means. Are the demographic of Virgin Voyager sailors, are they first-time cruisers or are they cruise loyalists?
So we actually have a very big proportion of people that are first-time cruisers, which is something I think we had.
It's part of what you were trying to attract.
We've created this business model was always about converting people who were existing cruisers who wanted something slightly different, wanted to go on an exclusively adult vacation, and then we would also, at the end of that, be able to attract people who've never been on a cruise before as well. So it was sort of both, but we were very much focused on cruising, because cruisers love cruising, and there's a reason they love cruising, right? It's a fantastic product, and we can offer a slightly fresh perspective on it, but at the end of the day, it's still a cruise, right, with a classic Virgin twist on it. I've been very surprised at how many people who've never been on a cruise before have actually come to us, particularly coming out of the pandemic when we all thought that we all had a big black eye as an industry. And I think people understand the value proposition of a cruise. They get it, and particularly for us, they love the fact that it's a bit more refreshing, it's a bit more relaxed. They love the fact that it's not so rigid. I think they love the fact that we include a bit more in our fares, so people don't feel like they have to get upcharged all the time. And so we've seen significant numbers. I mean, some of the numbers we're seeing in terms of our new bookings now are close to 50% new to cruise, which is just a fantastic kind of unheard of number, which is great for us.
Sticking quickly with your onboard demographic, You are very well known as adults only, adds to the fun, adds to the experience. As a mother, I can absolutely understand the appeal of an adults-only cruise, trust me. But I am curious, part of your team, has a long history with Disney, the CEO, very family-oriented, and cruise as an industry is a very family-oriented, very family-friendly industry. What was the decision-making behind going adults-only into the market?
Yeah, you're right. So Tom, my boss Tom, actually was the founding CFO and then eventually the president and CEO of Disney Cruise Line. So he has a rich history in the family market. And so it's actually quite funny that having pioneered the family market, which Disney sort of did in a new way, is now come across and said, you know what, I actually don't want to do anything with kids. I want an adult-only brand. So, but a lot of the learnings went into it we're very research-based at Virgin. So, and we typically do a lot of consumer work. So we did a lot of consumer research around it. And we actually ask people, like, would you consider an adult-centric proposition or would you think about an adult-only proposition? And what actually came out of that was that people's eyes lit up, much like what you talked about. They lit up when we said, well, it's actually exclusively adult, not adult-centric.
Really?
And they would say, really? And what was actually, for me, heartwarming and what really led us to go to where we did, people actually said they imagine a world where everything was a bit more premium and a bit more elevated. And one of the classic examples from a focus group was someone said, well, you wouldn't have to worry about chicken nuggets because all the food was going to be great because you don't have to do chicken nuggets and hot dogs. Now, we do have a wonderful fried chicken sandwich at Razzle Dazzle, which Frank over here helped pioneer. It's got a beet aioli on a charcoal bun. It's fantastic. I highly encourage anyone to go have that.
You don't want to completely get rid of fried chicken.
No, of course not. Fried chicken's fantastic, right? So we have that. We have our version of it. But the high level was that people said, I envision this would be a more premium experience, a more elevated experience. We're also able to do things like hammocks on balconies, which is very hard to get away with when you've got kids running on board, because the risk guys would come chasing me every day. They'd come chasing me every day anyway, though, because I have sorts of crazy ideas that drive them nuts, including Henry over here. But they come. But I couldn't do hammocks if we had kids running on board. So we did all sorts of things like that, and that really helped us get really comfortable with it. We also did a lot of market testing. And look, the market for an adult-only vacations in the Caribbean is big, right? There's 30 to 40% of all-inclusive resorts in the Caribbean are adult-only, and there's a reason for that. And this is, again, is part of how we think about life at Virgin is, well, they should exist in this market too. And so we should be that version here, and we should help educate the market on how deep the adult-only market can be.
All right, I'm going to switch gears for a second here. Scarlet Lady sails the Caribbean. You're about to launch your second ship. We'll sail the Mediterranean. These are evergreen, very popular cruise destinations. What was the thinking behind entering these markets when you know there's such a strong comp set involved in these regions already? And I know we're teeing up for the big news announcement that was made this morning, but focusing on Caribbean and the Mediterranean.
Well, you kind of have to fish where the fish are, right? So people want to cruise the Caribbean, they want to cruise the Mediterranean. We think we can offer a slightly different take on that. So we do late stays and overnights on all these itineraries. It's a feature of any global itinerary you put together. Is you've got to be able to do late stays, you've got to be able to do late nights. Overnights. The ships are purposely built to be mid-sized ships, so we can get into some ports that you really can't in other places. In Barcelona, for example, we're downtown in World Trade Center, as opposed to often the big pier. We're able to go to places like Sardinia and Corsica, and there's other places that are a little bit off the beaten path, but not completely off the beaten path. So as an example, on one of those Mediterranean itineraries, we don't go to La Spezia, we don't go to Civitavecchia, right? Those are the kind of the milk runs that people tend to be on. We tend to go slightly off the beaten path, but people love to cruise in those regions. It just makes sense to deploy these ships in those regions. And so what we're seeing is that people are really liking the itineraries. They're liking the different take on the destinations. Even when we're in the destinations, we don't typically do the same kind of shore excursions. We don't have big bus tours. Everything is more local operators, smaller entrepreneurs, because we don't have massive ships. We don't have to find homes for 4,000 people. We're talking about 2,700 people. So it helps us a lot as we build these itineraries. We're now, a global fleet now. We have 100 different destinations, 25 different places, different things we go in, 4 different ships now. So it's unbelievable, actually, how big and how fast we're growing.
Well, I'm glad you touched on local markets because it tees up my next question very nicely. There has been pushback in certain parts of the cruise industry that sometimes a cruise ship can be high volume passengers and low spend. One of your home ports, Barcelona, has a famous over-tourism problem. I'm curious to know how Virgin Voyages is creating experiences or encouraging their guests to properly invest money and spend money in the local communities everywhere you dock.
Yeah, look, it's a big part of how we developed all of these programs. So we call them Shore Things. They're our shore excursions program. We sort of set a mantra at the beginning. So when we started this business, we set up this mantra that we wanted to have an epic sea change for all, and we identified 5 key places where we wanted that to happen: our sailors, our crew, the environment. But one of them was the communities that we go to, and we said that we want to be the ship that people want to come into port, right? Sometimes I think, unfortunately, and somewhat unfairly, people aren't welcoming of ships because they believe that it doesn't serve the local economy. And so we wanted to make sure that we didn't feed that perception, because I think it is a bit of a misperception depending on the port that you're in. And so we wanted to work with local entrepreneurs. We work with lots of smaller tour operators. We don't do the big bus tours, as I mentioned before. We encourage people to go out and actually spend money in the local communities. And it's a big part of how we think about what destinations we go to. So if we go to destinations that don't allow us to do that, then it does go into our thinking about whether that makes sense for us to deploy a vessel into that region or not, and into that particular port. So when we pick these destinations, we're picking them on that basis, because it is important to us that the local community feels that we are actually helping. Now, Bimini, Bahamas is a great example. We go to Bimini. We actually recycle everything that we take off the ship. So Bimini does not have great recycling facilities there. And so our team, led by Frank, have pioneered a recycling program where we actually bring everything back to the ship and we recycle it ourselves, because we know that we can't do it there. So these are the kind of things that we're doing. We take on more operational complexity when we do this, obviously, though, but it's a signal to the local communities of the kind of ship we want to be and the kind of partner we want to be to these local communities, because we're there to help the local community, not to use their resources or to take advantage of them.
Okay. So the big news this morning, of course, is that you will be having a third home port. It's in a country you grew up in, if I'm not mistaken, which is Australia. The port is Melbourne, which is very exciting. Virgin has a huge, long-standing history, great relationship with Australia. The Virgin brand is very strong down there. So in some ways, it's very obvious why that was chosen as your third, but can you expand a little bit more as to why Australia over any other geographic region is where Virgin should be based?
Well, you said it. I mean, if you look at where the Virgin brand is strongest, it's strongest in the UK, in the US, and Australia. And so Australia, for us, is a very important sourcing market. And now it's also going to be a deployment market for us. It just made sense for us to go down there. There's such excitement for us. Just the announcement we did yesterday, the amount of buzz and excitement we were able to generate of us coming in, it's a big deal for Australia to get a brand like us to want to go there. Melbourne Port is thrilled that we're coming down there.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Australians just love cruising.
They do.
They're
love
a big
cruising, and
country.
cruising just reopened in Australia,
Yeah.
which is fantastic. I think New Zealand is one of the few countries still to go, and hopefully we'll get there soon with New Zealand. But cruising can be safe, right? And I think we've proved that as an industry. We've operated safely for the last year and a bit. And I think all the jurisdictions are seeing that, right? They're seeing the COVID protocols. They're seeing what we can do to help protect people and keep them safe. And we're seeing everything open up. So Australia opening now is fantastic for us. It's great to be able to deploy a ship down there. The Athens to Sydney and then Melbourne repositioning cruise
Epic
has been
It
it's
sounds
an amazing 45-day journey, Suez Canal and all these wonderful places. That actually is already close to 60% booked. We only had it open for the last week or two. So it just shows you there's such a pent-up demand for cruising, a pent-up demand for these destinations. And so Australia was just a very natural part of the roadmap as you think about how to profitably deploy these 4 ships.
Curious why Melbourne over Sydney. I always think of Sydney as sort of the more obvious cruise port in Australia.
Well, we have our own little twist.
Okay, true.
Why not?
You're going to disrupt a little bit.
Someone asked me that yesterday. I said, well, why not Melbourne? It's a great place. It's a great
enough.
city. There's a port there called Station Pier, which is fantastic. The ship actually is viewable from all these different places. I don't know if you've been. Have you been to Melbourne?
I
Erin?
have.
So there's a
yes.
very famous St Kilda Beach,
Yes.
which is where everyone is, and you can actually see the ship from St Kilda Beach. So it just made sense in the grand scheme of things for us. We always try and take a slightly different tack.
Fair enough.
And then we're doing lots of interesting itineraries down there as well. So we're just excited to be in Melbourne. They were excited to have us, and we're excited to be down there with them.
Great. I'd love to know, Virgin is so established in travel. I mean, Richard introduced, revolutionary airlines. I might be wrong, but I have heard, and I've not bothered to fact check it, that it was actually Virgin airplanes who first put the seat back screens on planes, which to me was, a huge game changer for travel. He's bringing us to the moon. Obviously, cruising is really important in his portfolio. What is transferable from all of the sort of Virgin investments in travel into cruise, and what about the Virgin Voyages is really singular and really stand out compared to the rest of the Virgin portfolio from a travel point of view?
That's a tough question. What's transferable? I think it's the culture. So we have a very unique culture at Virgin, and it comes really from Richard, right? So Richard has always said he started this company, 50, 60 years ago. He started Virgin, and he really wanted to create these businesses that were offering a different offering for the consumer. But where does it all start, though? It starts with the kind of crew and the kind of team that you have, right? And so his very simple mantra is you hire great people, you treat them well, right? They'll treat your customers well, and you'll have a great business, right? It's such a simple saying, but he keeps saying it, and so we kind of have to listen to it. But it's so true, though, right? I mean, I'm sure you'd agree, right? If you have great people, which we have a fantastic team at Virgin Voyages, we allow them to do what they need to do. We treat them well. The results are phenomenal, right? And you see what the results are, particularly for our ship teams. We have a very particular, unique culture we're building on these ships. We allow people to be themselves. We offer Wi-Fi and all these other benefits to them that you typically don't get elsewhere. Yes, it costs more, but it's the right thing to do. I mean, everyone should have Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is a basic human right now. Why not give them Wi-Fi, right? Now, the result is they're happier crew. We have unbelievable service on these ships, right? We're an award-winning ship now. We won Best New Ship last year. But the one thing you always read about is the service on board. Like the one consistent review is how wonderful the service is. Even when you get negative reviews or negative complaints, it's like, oh, I hated your blah, 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 but your crew were amazing, right? Which is fantastic, right? But that's the one thread I'd say it always runs through all the Virgin businesses. We always start with making sure we take care of the crew, because these are all service-based industries, right? So you have to be very good about the crew. And so that's one thing that I think I'm most proud of what we've been able to achieve, because way back when Tom came in, when Tom was our CEO, when we were like just the two of us, right, with a piece of paper, the big challenge for us was, could we hire the right kind of team and the right kind of crew? And so we've got, if you look now 5-6 years in, we have a fantastic shoreside crew. They're from all sorts of different industries. Some are from the cruise industry, some are not. All from different players in the cruise industry. They're a fantastic group of people. And the culture we've created is what I'm most proud of. It's a very open culture. It's a very collaborative culture. It's a culture with a very, very flat structure. We encourage people to speak up. We encourage people to collaborate. No idea is a bad idea. That's what I think has resulted in such a special product, is that kind of culture that we've created.
You not only attempted to launch, during COVID, you were stopped by COVID, but another very important moment happened in travel during the past couple of years, which was a real examination of diversity in travel. Of course, that was extended to the cruise industry. I have to imagine that gave the brand an opportunity. It was obviously a very important conversation, one that should have been started many, many years ago. I imagine that gave you an opportunity to figure out your approach to diversity, not just of crew, but also of passengers who you're including as your passenger. Can you speak to any developments in that front with Virgin, or any steps you've taken?
Yeah, look, we from day one wanted to be an inclusive brand, and this brand has always been an inclusive brand. We always look to welcome anybody, right, whether they're a sailor or crew member. From the very beginning, when we work with, if you just take crew, for example, we work with our recruiting partners. We actually went out to the recruiting partners and we sat down with them and said, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for a diverse crew. We're looking for these kinds of things. We want to encourage people to be themselves. And even the recruiting partners, I think at the time, would say, well, do you want a tattoo or not? And a tattoo is such a small example, but
it's become the poster child.
But of kind of like, and we said, well, why wouldn't we? As long as they're a wonderful crew member who's got the right personality and the right attitude, why wouldn't we welcome them with open arms? I don't care. We don't care what they look like. We don't care who they love, what their religious values are. It doesn't really matter, right? At the end of the day, we're looking for great humans to come and bring service to life. And that's one thing I'm really proud of what we've been doing. We have some very strict DEI targets that we've established. We have a head of sustainability on board that's always pushing us to do better. I want us to do more. I want us to be better than what we're doing right now. We have very high aspirations. The great thing is we're hiring. We're not an established company trying to repurpose our hiring base. We're actually hiring all this new crew. And so our team has very strict guidelines on how we're hiring new people to make sure we are hitting those DEI numbers. But they're a very important part of our brand. And that frankly is what part of makes the culture so special, is having that variety of thought, having that diversity of opinion. Diversity is a strength. And, I always say that to our team, that's the biggest strength we have, is the diversity of our experiences, the diversity of our professional backgrounds, the diversity of where we worked before, and creating an environment where that diversity feels comfortable collaborating and expressing their points of view has been key to our success. And that's one thing I'm very, very proud of. Any one of our team is welcome to call me any day and tell me that I'm full of nonsense, and we have a conversation about it, and sometimes they're right. So we need that kind of a culture, and I think that's what makes Virgin always so special. And it comes from Richard way back when, right? He preaches that all day long, right? He wants to talk to people, he wants to talk to crew, he wants to hear new ideas. And that's, I think, is what has made us such a special place.
Really quickly, because I don't want to not touch this. You spoke a little bit about it, but your epic sea change for all is a focus of sustainability, which you said is a big pillar of the brand. Speak to how Virgin Voyages is treating sustainability differently than the comp set in cruise right now.
Well, to say we treat it differently, the comp set would sort of imply that the comp set's not doing a good job. And actually, I think as an industry, we're doing a phenomenal job on sustainability. So if you don't mind, I would like to rephrase the question slightly, right? It's what's our take on sustainability? Because I would think you'd agree, right? I think as an industry, we're doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah, actually, one of my questions for you, which we did not have time to get to, was really stating that a lot of people would say, in terms of the travel industry, maybe I'll rephrase it this way. The travel industry, a lot of people think actually cruise is much more advanced than a lot of the other sectors in the travel industry. You have a background in the other sectors of the travel industry. A, do you think that's a true observation? And B, what is Virgin's approach to sustainability?
Yeah, so I think as an industry, we are probably more advanced, right? And sometimes I don't think as an industry we get enough credit for all the wonderful things that we're doing. A lot of our bigger competitors, right? I even don't want to talk about as competitors, our bigger industry participants, they're doing a phenomenal job, right? If you look at what they're doing in terms of sustainability and the efforts to drive change, it's fantastic, right? And we love being part of that. We love being part of that dialogue with them. We have our own perspective on it. We look to reduce waste wherever possible. We've got a few tweaks of our own. We don't have buffets on board, which reduces food waste significantly. We don't have any plastic water bottles on board. We were one of the first to ban plastic water bottles. Instead, we do refillable water stations. We have various fuel efficiency systems on board, like Climb-On, which takes all the waste energy systems and transforms them. But we continue to want to do better on this, and it's a continual focus and a continual discussion amongst ourselves of what we can do to even lift our game, even though we know we're playing in a world where everybody's lifting their game. And that's a great thing. It's a great thing for our industry, and I wish people would give our industry more credit for all these wonderful things they're doing. So hopefully you can help us with that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, for us, it's important messaging to get out there as well. And I think what's true is the cruise industry does work collaboratively because they know they're stronger doing it together, which is great. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation. I really enjoyed it. Super excited about the brand, and I really appreciate your time.
No problem.